déjà remercier AU-IBAR pour l'invitation et féliciter l'ensemble des présentateurs. Je pense que en tant que ministre, on commence à perdre l'habitude de s'asseoir pendant 4 heures pour suivre des présentations, même si à longtemps on n'était pas des étudiants. C'est vraiment vous féliciter et ces présentations montrent vraiment la qualité du travail qui est abattu au niveau du AU-IBAR. Et également vous dire que nous sommes en phase avec l'ensemble des thématiques qui ont été développées ici. Lorsqu'on prend la thématique en rapport avec la rage, je pense que nous sommes ensemble pour l'éradication en 2030 et nous mettons assez d'efforts, comme vous l'avez dit. Chaque année, nous organisons des campagnes de lutte contre la rage. Nous savons que c'est insuffisant, mais nous allons renforcer également ce cadre. Pour le bien-être animal, je pense que la dernière image de la présentation elle est vraiment illustrative. Là où vous avez une dame qui traque une charrette, et comme les dames elles le disent dans nos pays, si nos ânes meurent, c'est nous qui devenons les ânes. Donc, dans notre pays, nous vivons vraiment ce problème depuis 2018. Il y a des instituts des abattoirs qui se sont installés pour récolter la peau des ânes. Donc nous avons mis en place la réglementation pour limiter la commercialisation des ânes et même la circulation des ânes à l'intérieur du pays. Donc il serait vraiment très bien qu'au niveau international nous puissions coordonner pour pouvoir préserver cette espèce asile. Parce que comme vous savez, c'est une espèce qui se reproduit très lentement. Et le temps de la gestation c'est 12 mois pour avoir un petit. Et si les avatars sont accélérés, nous risquons de perdre cette biodiversité. Donc pour la digitalisation également, ça nous permettra de capitaliser l'ensemble des efforts que nous faisons au niveau international. Mais c'est encore une fois remercier AU-IBAR pour les efforts faits dans le cadre de la digitalisation. Mais nous connaissons tous le problème de la digitalisation, c'est la multiplicité des plateformes qui ne permettent pas de capitaliser. Donc si nous arrivons à avoir une seule plateforme au niveau continental, ça nous permettra vraiment de capitaliser l'ensemble de nos efforts. Je pense également pour la PPR, on est très engagé. Et le souhait est de voir le secrétariat de la PPR voir le jour en 2024. Et je pense que dans ce cas, comme vous l'avez dit dans les présentations, il y a beaucoup d'efforts qui sont déjà réalisés. Et si ce secrétariat est mis en place, lorsqu'il sera mis en place en 2024, il serait très bien que ce secrétariat soit en relation directe avec nos DSP. D'accord, donc c'est juste un mot pour vous encourager et dire également que l'ensemble des recommandations qui ont été faites ici, nous allons les endosser. Et donc rendez-vous à demain pour la réunion, la session. Merci.
The next will be Her Excellency Fatim Kofi, the Minister of China.
Bonjour à tout le monde. Moi, c'est Fatim Kofi, je suis la secrétaire d'État à l'élevage et aux productions animales. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres en charge des ressources animales et chers collègues, Madame la directrice générale du Bureau interafricain des ressources animales de l'Union africaine, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ambassadeurs, chefs de délégation et représentants des organisations sous-régionales, régionales et internationales, distingués invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, en vos rangs, grade et qualité, tout protocole observé. À l'entame de mon propos, permettez-moi d'exprimer, au nom du gouvernement de la République du Tchad, mes sincères remerciements aux autorités de la République seule, à la Commission de l'Union africaine pour l'accueil chaleureux et l'hospitalité dont nous avons bénéficié depuis notre arrivée en cette terre africaine. Qu'il me soit également permis d'adresser mes sincères remerciements et mes vives félicitations au Bureau interafricain des ressources animales de l'Union africaine, initiateur et organisateurs de cette importante rencontre continentale de haut niveau, en l'occurrence, ainsi qu'à ses traditionnels partenaires qui soutiennent notre continent dans les domaines de développement socio-économique des États membres en général et du secteur de l'élevage et des ressources animales. Distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, c'est aussi un grand honneur et un réel plaisir de me retrouver parmi vous ce matin. Le Tchad, pays sahélien à vocation pastorale, dont l'économie est essentiellement basée sur l'agriculture et l'élevage, compte un cheptel de 137 646 664 217 têtes, toutes espèces confondues selon le recensement général de l'élevage. Le Tchad est bénéficiaire de l'appui technique de l'AU-IBAR. Ainsi, le Tchad salue et encourage les différentes initiatives proposées par l'Union africaine qui entrent dans la droite ligne des perspectives nationales que sont la santé animale à travers l'éradication de la peste des petits ruminants à l'horizon 2030 et l'éradication de la rage transmise par les chiens, le bien-être animal par la préservation de l'espèce asile, de la question du pastoralisme, de l'approche d'une seule santé, pour ne citer que cela. Distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, pour finir, je réitère mes sincères remerciements aux pays hôtes et aux organisateurs de cette rencontre. Je vous remercie.
Dr. Sandy Kibongo Toye, the Minister from Côte d'Ivoire.
Avant tout, pour remercier l'établissement, bien sûr, le gouvernement éthiopien et surtout tous les différents exécutifs, nos amis de AU-IBAR, pour les facilités que vous faites à ma délégation, et surtout pour l'accueil fraternel que nous avons bénéficié dans ce jour ici. J'aimerais aussi relever. Merci aussi, chers collègues, de votre présence. J'aimerais relever que les différents points abordés ici ce jour entrent directement dans les différents axes opérationnels de notre département. D'ailleurs, en Côte d'Ivoire, nous avons fait de la lutte pour la protection des ânes un engagement très fort dans la mesure où nous avons pu prendre un décret pour protéger ces espèces de leur disparition et nous avons créé un projet spécialement dédié à la gestion et au bien-être de cet animal. Par ailleurs, nous encourageons aussi la mise en œuvre du programme africain de lutte contre la PPR qui est, elle en tout cas, essentielle contre la pauvreté, surtout dans le milieu rural. Ce qui est de la rage, nous convenons que cette rage tue près de 25 000 personnes en Afrique, avec plus de 40% de ces 25 000 qui constituent nos enfants. Nos enfants qui d'ailleurs meurent pour leur amour pour les animaux. Il est donc urgent de mettre en œuvre un programme africain et coordonné pour l'essentiel pour que nous atteignions nos objectifs à l'horizon 2030. Les initiatives sur les maladies aquacoles sont effectivement d'actualité et nécessitent une approche continentale pour faire face à ces différentes maladies aquacoles qui constituent une contrainte majeure au développement de l'aquaculture, c'est-à-dire l'élevage de poissons, tel que nous visons cette ambition dans nos différents pays. En somme, tous ces différents programmes et initiatives vont contribuer à l'atteinte des objectifs de l'Union africaine en matière de sécurité alimentaire, emploi des jeunes et des femmes, de lutte contre la pauvreté, mais surtout de préservation de la biodiversité. Je vous remercie encore une fois et félicitations pour le travail.
Minister of Somalia.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, the Chairman of the African Union Commission, the Commissioner Department of Agricultural, Rural Development and Sustainable Development of the African Union Commission, representatives of the development partners, the Director of the African Union in the African Bureau of Animal Resources, the Directors of General Brotherly State of the continent present here today, delegates from all the member states of African Union, and all protocols, participants, technical committees. Good afternoon. I am very much happy to be here with you in Addis Ababa, where the African Union and the African Union AU-IBAR have brought together the resource sectors of the continent to discuss and move forward new initiatives and activities helping our people to transform the lives and economies of our community in Africa. As the State Minister for the Minister of Livestock, Forestry, Range, Federal Republic of Somalia, and I know how much resource sector research our sectors, livestock, rangeland, and wildlife have potential to give good return and good well-being if they are invested and adequately sustainable. These resource sectors are also not only potential for the African food and economical needs, but also they can also feed and employ many sources of revenue for many other parties of the world. My country, Somalia, is also Louis and is very rich with many resources, livestock, fisheries, agriculture, and rangeland and resources for the front runners of this resource, where the livestock production provides over 40% of national GDP or over 70% of our agricultural GDP. However, the sector's current output contributors is just tip of iceberg compared to the potential due to the prolonged conflict and climate changes and effects under development to the animal and rangeland resource were never adequately benefited. I therefore argue that we work with support for the effort of the African Union Technical Department of Bureau, such as African Union AU-IBAR and African Union Commission Therapy, and not only to this, but also cooperation and support for these institutions, we can realize the successful inter-African trade and economical transformation each other between the African countries. I thank you all and for the welcoming for this very productive meeting and discussion about this very issue for which can be increasing our economical and we can solve many things regarding the natural resources in our countries. Thank you very much indeed for your organizers and all the participants, ministers and everyone who came to here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now let me call on our Excellency, representative for the Ministry for Nigeria, to come for short brief statements.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the ministers here present, ministers here represented, the Director AU-IBAR partners. Permit me to stand on the existing protocol. I represent the Honorable Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Nigeria. The presentations we have heard today touch very deeply on the heart of our President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in his renewed hope agenda. Nigeria population today stand at 220 million estimated, and we hit 400 million by 2050, according to FAO. And for us to attain food and nutrition security, we cannot relegate livestock to the background. Today, AU-IBAR has presented carefully thought out strategies and frameworks that will help us get to where we're going, the Africa we want to see. As a country, we support wholeheartedly the efforts of AU-IBAR. And we call on AU-IBAR as that organization of strength for animal resources in Africa, to look deeply into livestock and all that it takes to move the livestock sector forward, ranging from preserving our donkeys to eradication of PPR, eliminating rabies, looking at the fisheries and aquaculture sector, looking at the feed sector, and not forgetting the animal genetic resources. That IBAR takes on board all that we require, do not overemphasize any over the other. If we do, that bird called livestock will not fly. You've done so much in the sector. We are very grateful, and as a country, we'll continue to work with AU-IBAR and hope that we will see the best in the animal agriculture sector. The call for feed and fodder systems reform, I will call it, is a wake-up call for all of us. And the one for markets is a wake-up call for all of us. We cannot do livestock without feed and markets. No matter the vaccine you pump into an animal, if it's not well fed, we're wasting it. The same way, we produce so much without looking at the markets and see how Africa can get into the international markets. We're also wasting our time. A time has come for Africa to look beyond just feeding its populace to entry into the international markets, so that the livestock keeper will be better for it. And all of us around this table will be very happy. On this note, I bring you warm greetings from Nigeria, and I want to specially applaud the new director. Okay, thank you. That clap was for me. Can we clap for me? We must give her all necessary support. We must give her all necessary support she will need to move AU-IBAR forward in all spheres and give her due respect. Director, Nigeria has your back. AU-IBAR, we are very grateful for all you have done for the livestock sector, and we pray that you move from strength to strength. You can count on the support of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Here from the country representative of the Ministry of Kenya, the President.
Your Excellencies, the senior ministers, the senior experts, all protocols, good afternoon. I am here standing to present my cabinet secretary, Honorable Mediki Muturi, who will have been here today for the cabinet meeting in Nairobi. I must say that 60% of African landscape is arid and semi-arid areas. And arid and semi-arid areas are the future frontier of food production in Africa. Africa is known to consume more than it produces. And the potential to produce is there. And I want to thank the AU and the family for providing the coordination leadership in the development of animal resources for sustainable livestock development. We appreciate that. Long life, AU-IBAR. In fact, I was able to capture 4 areas in the entire presentation, and I think 3 has been adequately been captured. But there is one very critical issue that has been left out in the animal resource area, and that is the animal genetics. Animal genetics is very, very important. As a country, Kenya, we are really invested in that, in terms of the sex semen, in terms of the embryo transfer, and in terms of the AI and the surrogate bulls for arid and semi-arid areas. I must also say that feed is a very, very important aspect in terms of our livestock production. And we need to invest in the feed sector. Actually, drought should never be an emergency. And I think my dear sister has ably presented in her presentation, which was talking about feed and fodder, that if we are able to fix the issue of feeds, then we are able to handle and mitigate the effect of drought. The other issue which I captured very well is the animal health aspect, which we have adequately covered, and it is time for us to support the AU-IBAR in the coordination of animal disease control. The last aspect is what my sister from Nigeria has said, is the market. And all these 4, there is potential, opportunity for private sector to come in. Government is there only to provide the environment and facilitate the process, just the way the AU is coordinated. But I see a lot of opportunity for private sector in those 4 particular areas. In terms of the pastoralism, with the effect of the climate change, I'm sure it is more or less becoming untenable. And that pastoral people should be able to provide the immatures so that we are able to transfer to the feedlot systems. We pattern them in the feedlot systems so that through that way, I think the change should be the pastoralists to provide the immatures and then the end of the feedlots for finishing the market. And then other areas that I was really attached today was this endangered species called the donkey. The donkey is a poor man's animal, and it is the means of transport for the rural folk in our country. We have been told, and we know it as professionals in this line, that the donkey has low productive rate and low fertility. It is therefore to endorse the ban of the slaughter of life of donkeys for the skin. It is indeed an endangered species, unless rather we want our children and our sisters and mothers to take the role of donkeys, which indeed we should not be able to do so. And I support all that was said in the presentations. And the only way I think we can be able to grow our economy and create jobs is in the agricultural sector. We need to go back to those arable lands, to those asset areas with a frontier, future frontier for food production, invest in irrigation, irrigated pastures, because rainfall is becoming a challenge in the continent. And government needs to also implement the Maloba Declaration, whereby we need to be focused and think of dedicating 10% of our budget to operation. Those few remarks, I think, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kenya. I'm sorry we cannot give the floor for all our participants here. Countries, we have an emergency. The response will be closing in a few minutes. So before giving the floor to our distinguished of AU-IBAR, Dr. Nick Wakamba.
Colleagues, ministers, representatives of ministers, representative of Commissioner, Rabe, Director AU-IBAR, all of you distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I was asked to talk about animal feed fodder, and launch the program today. However, we have had a long day, the whole morning, and there have been so many presentations. Allow me to make comments before I make my formal speech. The first one is the animal production system. In animal production system, you need 4 pillars. The first pillar is animal genetics. We have to invest in animal genetics. It's good enough to have so many numbers of animals, but now we no longer talk of numbers, we talk of productivity. It's not production, it's productivity. We want to bring efficiency in the system. World over, the population is increasing. You had the remarks from my sister from Nigeria. There are 120-something million. So this population is increasing, but the world is not growing bigger. On the contrary, it is shrinking and is becoming very unfriendly. So we have to devise means of efficiently producing to match the demand of the population. So in this regard, I would encourage AU-IBAR. I will make my formal communication tomorrow about genetics. I don't actually share it with the former director. We have to look at genetics. Pillar number 2 is animal nutrition. It is one thing to have animals, which are very good. But if you don't feed them, you are just wasting time. You have to water the fruit, the tree in order to enjoy the fruit. So these animals need to be fed. When I had the presentation from my sister, it actually calls for attention. And I'm happy that we have a handful of ministers here. We should go and actually make sure that this is put in policy framework. Feeding the animal cannot be squarely the responsibility of a public good. We must actually say we must have very cheap capital for farmers to feed the animals, because we need the animals for tomorrow. In Japan, they subsidize keeping cows up to $40 per day. So here in Africa, we have a very huge resource. So feeding animal nutrition is very key, because if you have to feed the population, you also safe animal products must come from a feeding program. In Uganda, we are at the tail end of enacting the law on animal feeds that take care of stakeholders. Pillar number 3 is animal health. I want to thank AU-IBAR for the efforts you have made on animal health. And I think we should clap for them. I am very privileged. I've worked with the former ED and a director. I've also worked with him. Now I'm working with you. But on the animal health, we have done quite very good step. I will make the details tomorrow, but we are very grateful. But there is one thing you are neglecting here, and that is the STC and trypanosomiasis. Because you cannot disguise it under the One Health concept. This is a very big problem, and the efforts we had made, we are losing out because there is infection, and we need actually to make sure that we do the job and finish it. The first pillar is that we must have policy and legal framework to back these interventions. Because if AU-IBAR comes up with good ideas, we in the country we must actually formulate policies to make this agenda implementable. So with these remarks, let me go to my formal speech on animal feeds. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Africa has a huge livestock endowment, about 1/3 of the world's livestock, making it an important resource for our livestock and economies. A third of our continent's population relies on the livestock sector, making it critical to African livelihood, employment, business, trade, market, and economies. Of remarkable note is the fact that in the midst of the global climate change process, Africa livestock system, which has a very low contribution to greenhouse emission, holds solutions to climate change and should be protected and documented for its purpose. Africa should lead in identifying, harnessing, and protecting these valuable solutions. We cannot talk about efforts to enhance global food nutrition security and ignore our contribution of animal resources. Can you talk of animal of food security and ignore animal protein? Sometime in Rome, those who are here for some time, we put up a spirited fight to make sure that they put money in livestock. Because when you hear people are malnourished, what are they lacking? They are lacking milk, they are lacking animal protein. However, despite this African livestock system are among the most affected by climate change, and with increasing occurrences, severity of climate change episodes, data show that a threat is growing. The current COVID-19 pandemic and Russia and Ukraine conflict have compounded this effect. Feed constitutes 60% of cost of livestock production and is an area that has been greatly impacted with global supply chain disruptions. This crisis have underscored the fragility of the way we feed our animals, with major losses of livestock products, loss of employment, livelihood, and business. When we had our sister presenting here, those of you who had not read the paper, I read the paper last night. I had something going through my spine. I have visited some countries, I also visit some areas in my country, but you find livestock moving 5 kilometers to be watered. Are we really serious? Can you get milk out of a cow that has moved 10 kilometers to and fro? It's impossible. So I want to thank you, AU-IBAR, for these revelations. We as ministers, we are going to take them up. The massive losses of livestock, inefficiencies in livestock production, and the huge waste of existing feed resources is untenable. Livestock provide high nutrition products, of which small amounts can provide critical nutrients for young children, mothers, reproductive age, lactating mothers, the sick, aged, and other vulnerable persons. Currently, the only 7 member states are on track to reduce stunting among children below the 5 years. Even with an import bill of $4 billion worth of livestock resources, food, Africa has a huge gap in meeting her nutrition needs. In many regions, resource-based conflict due to feed and fodder shortage have perpetuated endemic insecurity. Honorable colleagues and distinguished participants, this is true. We cannot keep our heads in the sand. Things are not doing well. Nomadism and transhumance are evidence that pastoralists are moving from place to place in search of pasture, water, and food. However, this has implications for disease spread. We must provide water. We must provide feeds. Because people are running here and there, they are looking for food, they are looking for survival of their animals. Urgent action is needed to remedy this crisis issues through addressing African livestock feed and fodder system. We call for the following: development of feed and food and fodder sectors or industries as critical strategic action to enhance stabilization, efficiency of producing of quality livestock sourced food, resilience and protection of livestock-based livelihood, business and economies, and for youth employment. This will include reform of policy legislation, regulatory and institutional framework and coordination mechanism. Dedicate public sector budgets. We have the Maputo Declaration. If I ask all of you here how many people are giving 10% of their national budget to agriculture, I would like somebody to put up his hand or her hand. Zero. So we are talking about agriculture, we are not putting money there. So ministers who are here, we have to talk until the cows come home. So budget must be provided. But even when you look at AU-IBAR, the money we are putting there under the Commission for Rural Economy, the livestock sector is underfunded. Development of feed and fodder value chain, including input supply chain, feed and fodder market, and trade facilities, infrastructure and distribution logistics. We must put money in the infrastructure. Because if we don't have the infrastructure for livestock, whatever we are doing, we shall not make the standards the market desires. Financing, insurance, and contracting mechanisms, including incentives to enable and grow private sector investment. Academic training and capacity building institutions, research and development technology and extension framework and investment. Let me tell you, the solution for Africa will not come from outside. We must do them ourselves. I was reading the papers, I saw one of them seeking assistance from somewhere. This is not correct. Absolutely. We must not remember where we have, we must not forget where we have come from. I will leave it for another meeting. These investments must be accompanied by dedicated public sector budgets in animal health and genetic improvement to realize the benefit of better feed and fodder resources. Enhancement of the approach of emergency response within the feed and fodder sector, utilizing tools that are explicitly based on feed and fodder sector indicators and linked to human food and nutrition security indicators that define livestock production targets and within clear remedial action to address the feed and fodder shortages in Africa. A continental African alliance stakeholder feed and fodder association to guide the growth of more robust African feed and fodder system and institutionalization of a link between human food and nutrition security and livestock feed and nutrition. In Uganda, we don't allow our animals to feed on feeds of animal origin. I don't know what you colleagues in your area is, but we must be sensitive because we know Africa is the safest continent. We must take advantage and plan it very well before we get contamination. The institutionalization of monitoring and mutual accountability framework that generates an annual status report on African feed and fodder sector and highlights issues of strategic and emerging importance in view of the dynamic environment and growing threats in the world. 5. Urgent mobilization of resources to address the current and future feed and fodder shortage on the African continent, and we must start with AU-IBAR. Your Excellencies, these strategic actions will ensure Africa generates sufficient feed and fodder to meet the nutritional need of its livestock resources in alignment to the required livestock sourced food needed to address critical human nutrition targets in the world. African Union, through a specialized technical organization, the Inter-African Bureau for Animal Resources, will coordinate this action, including development of guidelines and support member states develop feed and fodder economic sectors and enhance emergency response in the sector. I call for urgent commitment and investment in the approach, even while we continue to undertake action to respond to current needs and future climate shocks. We envision that with these actions, such shocks do not have to result in huge losses where we have experienced in the past. We must actually create resilience so that we minimize the shocks of these problems. We are also envisioning with a greater production efficiencies, more affordable, nutritiously livestock sourced food, and better nutrition outcome. This approach can also contribute to addressing resources based on conflict in many livestock areas. I call for development banks, strategic partners, private sector, including finance and insurance institutions, and the NGO world partner with us in realizing what is envisioned under this call. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, I am honored today on behalf of my colleagues here, ministers, who have made statements, to launch this call for urgent action to address livestock feed and fodder shortage and avert future feed-related disasters in Africa. Thank you for your attention and for listening to me.